There's like 8 days left in the 9-point issue 2 Kickstarter. Please go check it out. We're almost 1 week till the end, so please go support it. We really want to print this cool comic about kitty knights. There's a link in the description down below. Please go check it out, and thank you for your support. Okay, on to the video. So as you probably know, if you're into comics, speech bubbles are really important. And here's why they're important. These may be things you haven't thought about, but here we go. Speech bubbles are really important because they help with the flow of your comic. So I've talked about this in previous videos, but comic flow is the composition and visual cues you use in your comic that guide the reader's eye around the page so that they read the first panel, then the second panel, etc. until they get to the final panel and then on to the next page. Speech bubbles play a huge role in this because, well, the first thing that your reader's going to look at when they're looking at your comic page is they're going to look at the speech bubbles. Because they're going to look at something to read, they're going to glance at the art for context, then they're going to read the dialogue, or maybe they read the dialogue first and then they look at the panel for context. But either way, it's really important. It's always going to be looked at. And wherever it's placed in your panel or on your page is really important, because if you put it in the wrong space, people aren't going to know where to look and they're going to get really confused. And of course, the dialogue and the exposition that is held within your speech bubbles is super important, so you really want your readers to find it so they can read it and understand what the heck is going on in your story. So they're really, really important. You need to do them right. So here are some tips to make your speech bubbles hella rad. So number 1, make sure you plan them in early. Okay? I think a lot of people who are new to kind of comics, they're really afraid of covering up this artwork that they've worked really hard on, that they've drawn out. They're really scared of putting a speech bubble over top of it and covering up half of what they've done. So what's really important is when you are planning out your comic page, you're putting that speech bubble in the thumbnailing stage really early on as possible, so that you don't have to draw all that pretty art behind it. You just got this speech bubble and you drew everything around it, and you didn't have to put in all that extra work, and you don't have to cover up your lovely art. So make sure you plan them in. Don't put anything detailed underneath them. You're going to be really upset. And your speech bubbles are important, and they need room to breathe. So make sure you plan them in really early. They're so important. So number 2, make sure that your text within your speech bubbles is legible. There are lots of pre-made fonts that you can choose from. I think Blambot? Yeah, Blambot. I highly recommend Blambot as a place to get your fonts. They have lots of fonts that are just traditionally used in comics. If you're not sure what to look for, comics tend to be sans serif fonts. They tend to be full caps, and they're very legible. So don't go using Comic Sans. Although Comic Sans is very legible, but it's one of those fonts that's screams. Designers don't like it. It's overused. It's a very silly looking font. Don't use a serif font like Times New Roman. Don't do it. It's weird. It's hard to read unless you're trying to get a very specific effect. I highly recommend just using traditional comic fonts. Ones I've used are Web Letterer. I think I've used Acme something. There's lots you can choose from, and a lot of them are free. If you plan to do handwritten text, make sure that your handwriting is legible. Test it with people, see if people can read it. Make sure it's very clean so that people aren't confused, is that an F? Is it an R? What is that? And on that same note, make sure that whether you're using font or handwriting it, make sure that you are using high contrast with your colors, because sometimes with a speech bubble you want the background of the speech bubble to be a color or the text to be a color or both, instead of just black and white. But you want to get your contrast as close to white on black or black on white, as close to that as you can, because if it's two colors that are very similar in value or very similar in color, they're going to be hard to see. They're going to be hard to read. People who have problems with vision will have trouble with it and probably put down your comic. It's just way better practice to do high contrast so that it's really easy to read. No one's confused that way. Number 3, make sure to give your text breathing room within the bubble. Don't cram the text right up against the outline or the edge of the speech bubble. Don't let the text hang out the sides of the bubble. You know, your text needs room. You know, it needs a container so that it's easy to read. It doesn't get mixed up with the background. It keeps it nice and legible. Just make sure it has a good amount of room around it. Not like so huge that your like text is like super tiny, like a little island in the middle. Like, just give it like another like line head space, like above and below and on the sides, and you're good. Number 4, point the tail of your speech bubble towards whoever is speaking. Typically, it's like good practice to have the tail point toward the face of whoever's speaking, but I don't really treat that as like a hard rule. If you need your bubble to point towards someone's just like body, like their shoulders or their abdomen or whatever, that's fine as long as it's like you need it to happen for your comic flow to work. As long as you can tell who is speaking, you're good. My cats are upstairs eating everything on the counter right now. Ugh. Finally, I think just some like little good practice things. Speech bubbles tend to be circles, so I think it's very important to have your text align in the center, and the stacks of your letters to like get them to fit in the bubble. The line in the middle of the bubble will be longer, whereas like the words or lines at the top will be smaller, so it kind of fits the container it's in. And if you're doing like a speech bubble that's like a weird shape, it's not necessarily a circle, maybe it's a square, then make sure that it like fits the container it's in. It just makes it a little more pleasing and easy to read. So there you go. Make sure to treat your speech bubbles with respect. You know, nothing makes me drop a comic faster than if I can't read it, whether it's like there's no contrast between the text and the background, or if the letters are spilling out the sides of the bubble, or if it's handwritten and I don't know what the heck any of it is because it's written super tiny. Like, that stuff just makes me not want to read a comic. So make sure that your text is nice and legible. Make sure that your speech bubbles are in the right place so that people can find them and they understand who's speaking and they're read in the right order. And I know that does sound like a lot of work and a very tall order if you don't know what you're doing, but just get lots of practice in. Read other comics, see what other people have done, you know, do your research and try your best. And, you know, get feedback if you're ever not sure if your speech bubbles are in the right order. See what other people think. And I hope all this helps. Good luck on your comics, friends. You can do it. I know you can. Can you tell I'm tired? I feel like tired and goofy. But yeah, I really hope this helps. I know speech bubbles, like, when I started, I had some trouble with them. It was mostly like the placement of them. Because I was like, I don't want to cover up my work. I'm just going to shove all my speech bubbles off into the corner. And it really hurt all my comic flow. But I got better. You guys can get better at it. Don't worry about it. You can do it. I believe in you. And yeah, that's all I got today. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos about comics and comic advice. And please make sure to check out the 9-point Kickstarter because it's almost over. And it's your last chance to get a heckin' 9-point book. So yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.